In 2002, one man, a shareholder from Texas, filed a lawsuit against NASCAR. He wasn't a driver, he wasn't a team owner, and he wasn't even rich. He was just an average fan who felt NASCAR had broken a promise. But what started as a simple fight for fairness ended up shaking the foundations of the sport for years to come. That single lawsuit would cost millions, close historic racetracks, and completely reshape the NASCAR Cup Series schedule for decades. And the strangest part? It all began with one man's frustration over a missing race date. This is the story of Francis Ferko and how his lawsuit changed NASCAR forever. By 1995 and 1996, NASCAR was hitting another gear entirely. TV ratings were climbing every single year. Tracks were selling out over 150,000 seats without hesitation. Sponsors were flooding the sport, and every major city in America wanted a piece of NASCAR's momentum. Tracks like Atlanta remodeled itself for the big boom that NASCAR was experiencing. Las Vegas was rising from the desert, creating a new track out west. California Speedway was under construction, and NASCAR's leadership had one mission: expand NASCAR to bigger markets in the entire country. That's when the spotlight shifted to one place: Texas. The Dallas-Fort Worth area was booming with millions of potential race fans and no major NASCAR presence. To the France family, it was a perfect new frontier. To Burton Smith, the aggressive, ambitious owner of Speedway Motorsports, it was the crown jewel he wanted for his empire. So in 1995, construction began on the brand new Texas Motor Speedway. It was built to hold over 150,000 screaming fans, and it would become one of the largest sports venues in the world. And from the moment the blueprints were drawn, one promise sat in the center of everything. Texas wouldn't just be another stop on the NASCAR schedule. It would be one of the major stops, with eventually 2 NASCAR Cup Series dates every single year. After all, almost every big market track owned by NASCAR's sister company, ISC, already had 2 races, so why not Texas? When the track finally opened in April of 1997, the hype was unreal. Traffic clogged highways for miles, the stands were packed from bottom to top, and NASCAR saw one of the biggest crowds it ever had drawn for a brand new venue. Texas Motor Speedway wasn't just built for racing, it was built to become a powerhouse super speedway. And a statement to the world that NASCAR sent was it was no longer a regional sport, it was national, it was mainstream, and it was here to stay.
Texas Motor Speedway opening day. Interstate batteries 500. 150,000 seats sold. 194 suites filled. 43 competitors ready to battle for $3.8 million on this $120 million racing facility. Pace car speed today about 60 miles an hour. Pit road speed of 55. Field coming down. Jarrett and Gordon lined up, and it is Dale Jarrett through the gears and jumping out in front.
Well, you can see everybody trying to get in single file right at the first of the race. There's a lot of debris on the racetrack, a lot of sand. Trouble. Turn 1.
Big crash in the center of the field, collecting 2-3 cars as they broke away that have really been hammered. Several others involved.
Caution is out.
But as the seasons rolled on, something strange happened. Despite its size, its market, and its early success, the second Cup race never showed up for Texas. NASCAR kept its schedule locked, and the new tracks they built, they got their dates, but not Texas. It still was holding out at one race. Fans in Texas grew frustrated. Bruton Smith grew frustrated, and one quiet shareholder, just an ordinary fan, wanted a big change. And it would be a big change when he would file a lawsuit against NASCAR. And it all started with this one missing race date. In February of 2002, a man named Francis Ferko, a small shareholder of Speedway Motorsports Inc, or SMI, the company owned by Burton Smith, decided to take on NASCAR itself. Ferko was from Texas, and like many NASCAR fans in the Lone Star State, he was proud of the brand new Texas Motor Speedway. The track had opened in 1997 with promises of growth, excitement, and 2 annual NASCAR Cup Series races, just like many of the major tracks owned by NASCAR and its sister company, ISC. But year after year, that second race never came. NASCAR kept its schedule locked, and Texas was left out with just one Cup race. Ferko believed NASCAR had broken a commitment to its state and to SMI. he also saw something much larger at play, that NASCAR and ISC, both controlled by the Francis, were operating as a monopoly. He argued that NASCAR would never give a second race to the track they didn't own, and that it was unfair to every independent speedway in America. So Ferko sued, and almost overnight, this quiet shareholder from Texas became the man who dared to challenge the France family's empire. To represent him, Ferko hired some of the most famous attorneys in the entire country, none other than Johnny Cochran's law firm. Yes, that Johnny Cochran, the same lawyer who recently defended O.J. Simpson in one of the most famous trials of the U.S. history. Cochran himself called NASCAR's actions antitrust and said, breaking up NASCAR and ISC is a logical end result, and we have legal counsel to do it. In addition, we have to resolve. NASCAR, of course, didn't take this lying down. They hired one of the sharpest legal minds they could find, David Boies, the attorney who had represented Al Gore during the 2000 presidential election recount. This courtroom was lined up and looked stacked. Now it looked like something straight out of a particular thriller. O.J. Simpson's defense team on one side versus Bush and Gore's lawyer on the other, and in the middle, NASCAR's entire future. By the fall of 2002, Speedway Motorsports publicly backed Ferko's claims. They issued a statement confirming that NASCAR had promised a second Cup race to Texas. SMI explained that in 1996, NASCAR wanted to expand to new markets and encouraged Bruton Smith to buy the old North Wilkesboro Speedway. If Smith did, one of Wilkesboro's races would be moved to Texas, and a second date would soon follow. But years passed, and that promise was never kept. SMI said that in between 1996 and 1998, NASCAR's chairman Bill France Jr. personally assured them that Texas would get a second race date by 1999. That statement was also a bombshell. NASCAR responded almost immediately, claiming nothing more than greed. Their statement read, SMI didn't seek to better the sport, but only to enrich itself at the expense of the sports and its fans. Behind the scenes, the France family was furious. They believed Burton Smith was using Ferko as a pawn, a legal weapon to force NASCAR's hand. NASCAR filed a motion to have SMI named as the official plaintiff instead of Ferko, but the court didn't buy it. The motion was denied. The case would continue as Ferko versus NASCAR, and the little guy from Texas is now officially going head-to-head with one of its most powerful organizations in sports. Meanwhile, Burton Smith loved every second of it. When asked about Ferko, he said, "He's my hero. I haven't met him, but I like him." As the case moved forward, things only got worse for NASCAR. Their motion to have the case dismissed, denied. Their motion to replace Ferko with SMI, denied. Their motion to avoid trial, denied again. For NASCAR and ISC, its legal bills were piling up. ISC alone claimed they had already spent over $1 million in their defense. And the longer the case dragged on, the more nervous the France family became. 2 years later, by 2004, the case was headed to a full trial. Depositions were piling up. Witnesses were being questioned. But before it could reach a courtroom, a judge ordered both sides, SMI and ISC, to meet for settlement talks. Publicly, Brian France, who had recently taken over for NASCAR, told reporters he wanted the case to go to trial. He said, "It's moved through the court system, and my preference is to try it in the courtroom. A lot of the facts have come through discovery. Witnesses have weighed in, and I think we should try the case and get it over with." But privately, sources said France was desperate to avoid a public trial. The potential damage, both financial and reputational, was simply too great. After nearly 2 months of back-and-forth negotiations, a settlement was reached on April 21st, 2004, and the results were pretty massive. Under the agreement, Texas Motor Speedway would finally get its long-promised second Cup Series date. But to make it happen, NASCAR and ISC had to reshuffle their entire schedule. Here's how it went down. ISC agreed to sell Rockingham Speedway to SMI for $100 million. Rockingham's lone Cup Series date was then transferred to Texas, removing it completely off the Cup Series schedule. With the money from that sale, ISC would then purchase Martinsville Speedway, claiming it as one of NASCAR's historic tracks. And to top it off, one of NASCAR's most historic tracks, Darlington Raceway, would be now moved from 2 races to 1 in replace of Phoenix Raceway. In a single move, 2 historic tracks were lost, 2 changed ownership, and the NASCAR schedule would never look the same again. All of it because one man filed a lawsuit.
Brian, do you feel by settling the lawsuit you have opened yourself up to other lawsuits from non-SMI track operators? And are you concerned about the antitrust issue lingering?
You know, we have had a history of being very aggressive at defending NASCAR's business practices. We were aggressive in this case. We'll be very aggressive in the future. Make no mistake about that. I will say that there was a solution in this case that was unique. We were able to find that worked for everyone. It's probably not the case in most. And the other issue about, you know, did we get, from an antitrust standpoint, we feel very good about that we're a pro-competitive business model. Frankly, the only one in motorsports around the world that truly works for everyone. Drivers, teams, tracks, all of our partners, as the sport has grown, they've grown. So it'd be hard pressed, and you've heard me say this before, to make a case at the end of the day that we would not be a pro-competitive business model for everyone.
We heard a question during the press conference in which one of the reporters wanted to know if settling the Ferko litigation is going to bring on more of these sorts of lawsuits. You know far better than I how valuable these race dates are. Do you think we're going to see some more headbutting, let's say, in the future over race dates?
I don't think it's going to lead to more lawsuits. This was a terribly, terribly expensive lawsuit. It consumed a tremendous amount of time, and it was settled amicably. We're all very happy that it doesn't have to go through court, because this could have tied, you know, with an appeal and everything else, it could have tied things up for 5, even 10 years down the road.
Well, let's take a look at some of the details of that lawsuit settlement. The suit was over an alleged second date for Texas Motor Speedway. As a part of the details, and you heard Brian France mention that it's a very complicated deal, Speedway Motorsports Incorporated will acquire North Carolina Motor Speedway at Rockingham for just over $100 million. International Speedway Corporation, which operates 10 tracks with NASCAR dates, acquires Martinsville Speedway, and as you heard Brian France say, in its entirety from the Earl family and other investors for $192 million. And not mentioned during the press conference was the fact that Nazareth, Pennsylvania, the speedway there with a long history, including a recent history of NASCAR racing, will stop operations as far as NASCAR is concerned in 2005.
For the fans, it was bittersweet. Texas got a second race, a huge win for Burton Smith and SMI, but it was the cost of tracks like Rockingham and Darlington, both of which steeped in NASCAR history. And for Francis Ferko, a man who started it all, the victory came at a price. The media attention surrounding the lawsuit cost him his job. He was forced to move, and many within the NASCAR circle saw him as a villain who killed the Rockingham race. Years later in 2009, Ferko spoke again and actually regretted it. "I surely didn't want Rockingham to lose a date," he said. "I just wanted NASCAR to add the date to the schedule. The settlement took the race out of Rockingham, and that's heritage. But I think that was what NASCAR's goal was all along." Ferko admitted he was disappointed in how it ended. "The ultimate outcome was that Texas got its race, but I was disappointed with how it occurred. I would have liked it to have gone to trial." The Ferko case remains one of the strangest, most impactful legal battles in NASCAR history. It exposed the deep tension between NASCAR and its independent track owners. It showed how tightly controlled the France family's empire really was, and it proved that even one small shareholder with enough determination could force a billion-dollar company to make massive changes. The lawsuit may have started in a Texas courtroom, but its ripple effects were felt across every speedway in America. Rockingham lost its date. Martinsville was bought and was no longer considered an independent track. Darlington was cut to only one race date. And Texas Motor Speedway, the track that started it all, finally got what it was promised. One man changed NASCAR, but in the process he changed himself and the sport forever. The Ferko lawsuit is a reminder that NASCAR history isn't just written on the track. It's written in boardrooms, courtrooms, and contracts. Sometimes the biggest battles don't happen at 200 miles per hour or even on the racetrack. It happens behind closed doors, and we may never know what NASCAR is really thinking.